Straighten the end of woven fabric. An important step before starting to sew on a fabric is to analyze it and make sure that the fabric has proper edges. This lesson will enable you to check and straighten an uneven end of a woven fabric. Objective: at the end of this classroom, you'll be able to straighten an uneven end of a woven fabric by pulling thread, straighten the ends of woven fabric by tearing. The first thing you will have to analyze is the kind of fabric that you have in front of you. Check whether the fabric is woven, knit, or non-woven. Let us learn how to analyze a woven fabric. We can first make sure that the fabric is straight by looking at the weave closely. The horizontal thread and the vertical thread should run in a right angle. However, if you find that the fabric is uneven and has an uneven angle, then you will have to straighten out one of the cut ends. Let us see how to cut along the design. If there is a prominent design line, such as a woven stripe or plaid, you can cut along the design. Be careful not to take a printed line as a reference, because the print may not match up with the grain. However, if there is not a woven design line to follow, you will have to pull a crosswise thread. Let us see how to pull a crosswise thread. Step 1. Snip through the self-edge of fabric. First, position the self-edge of fabric facing you. Then snip through the self-edge. The self-edge is a finished part of the fabric along the vertical grain, securing the weave not to unravel. Step 2. Pull a thread and cut. Then find one crosswise thread and pull it until you reach the opposite self-edge. Snip the other self-edge. If the fabric is loosely woven, you might be able to pull the thread completely out of the fabric. You can then cut the fabric along the pulled thread. Step 3. Pulling thread for tightly woven fabric. If the fabric is tightly woven, you will need to pull the threads every few inches or pull it slightly so it puckers. Step 4. Fold and align the self-edges. Once you have a perfectly straight cut edge, fold the fabric in half lengthwise, aligning the self-edges. If the cut edge is not straight, or the corners don't form right angles, the fabric is off grain and needs to be corrected. Let's have a quick review of how to pull a crosswise thread. Step 1. Snip through the self-edge of fabric. Step 2. Pull a thread and cut. Step 3. Pulling thread for tightly woven fabric. Step 4. Fold and align the self-edges. Now let's watch how to straighten the ends of woven fabric by tearing. Step 1. Identify the ends of fabric. Determine which end is longer and which is shorter. On the fabric, you could easily see that one side is an inch or so shorter than the other side. Step 2. Snip and tear the fabric. Make a small snip about half an inch 1 to 2 centimeters down from the raw edge and try tearing your fabric. Cut the end using scissors. Straightening fabric ends by tearing will not work for every fabric. If the tear runs out before the other end, snip again another 1/2 inch and tear along the whole fabric. Straightening fabric ends by tearing will not work for every fabric. If threads pull along the right and left side of the tear badly, don't continue. Let's have a quick review of how to straighten the end of woven fabric by tearing. Step 1. Identify the ends of fabric. Step 2. Snip and tear the fabric. With that, we come to the end of this class. Let's recall what we have learnt so far. 1. The horizontal thread and the vertical thread in a woven fabric should run in a right angle. 2. If you find that the fabric has an uneven angle, straighten out one of the cut ends. 3. If there is a prominent design line, such as a woven stripe or plaid, you can cut along it. 4. If there is not a woven design line to follow, you will have to pull a crosswise thread. 5. You can also straighten the end of the woven fabric by tearing. You have now learned how to straighten the end of a woven fabric. Take our next class to learn how to correct a woven fabric with off grain.